Good evening, everyone. It is 5 o'clock on March 21st. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Tom Chiappa.
Here.
Pamela Dowd. Here. Jim McKenzie. Here. Sean Onmacht. Here. Dave Crisafulli.
Here.
Maura Dempsey.
Here.
And Lisa Glidden is here. Let's please rise for the pledge.
A moment of silence for two district employees that I just happened to read in the newspaper recently passed away. Frank Warren, Mr. Warren, he was a principal here at the high school, I believe, and Linda Straight also, I believe, retired from here probably around 15 years ago or so, roughly. She, I think, started in food service and retired from school monitor. So please, a moment of silence.
And could I add to that Mr. Charles Young, who I didn't even realize had passed away.
Me either.
And so, who was a former teacher here as well.
All right, moving on to floor to the public. The Oswego City School District Board of Education welcomes public comment at this portion of the meeting using the following guidelines. Each speaker who signed up is permitted 3 minutes for their comments. Speakers may not yield their remaining time to others. All comments must be directed to the board president. The board will listen to comments and input, but will not necessarily debate or discuss items. Operational matters will be directed to school administration for handling. The board is not permitted to address personnel or individual student matters in open session. The board will limit repetitive comments to give time to others wishing to speak, as well as to maintain meeting efficiency. The board president has the authority to end a speaker's comments or close public comment as appropriate. Any additional written correspondence or letters may be directed to the board clerk for distribution to the board, and the board expects proper decorum at all times. So our first, Bill Braun. Mike? Dahar? Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
No, another time.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
That's okay, Mitch. My mistake.
Okay. All right, so item A on our agenda for this evening is the school district budget vote and Board of Education election. Are you going to take presenting this for May 16th, the designation of hours and polling sites? Or is this in your,
The location of our
The
polling sites
loca-
is in the budget.
it's in the budget presentation? Okay, so we can, is that the same thing about the voter registration? Yeah, we can. Okay. Yeah. Because it's just up here now. I'll read through them and then we can, I don't think there's any contention about this. Okay, so, the date of the election is 9 a.m., or on Tuesday, March 16th, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. District 1 votes at the Scriba Fire Station, District 2 at Anthony Crisafulli Ice Rink, District 3 at the Ellen Grace Church, and District 4 is Oswego Town Hall. We have, sorry, I'm reading this backwards. So that is voting on the 23-24 Oswego City School District budget, accompanying propositions, and electing 3 persons to the office of member of the board for a term of 3 years from July 1st, 2023, and ending June 30th, 2026, and electing 1 person to the member of the board to fill the empty seat commencing May 17th, 2023, and ending June 25th, 2025. Is there a motion for the election designation of hours and voting and polling sites?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Tom. Second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Pam. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Designation of voter registration days. The Board of Education designates Tuesday, April 11th, and Wednesday, April 12th, between the hours of 9 and 5, as the dates on which the Board of Registration of the said school district will meet at 185 East Seneca Street to prepare to register, preparing a register for the school district for the election to be held on May 16th. The final day to register to vote in the Oswego City School District budget vote and Board of Education election is Tuesday, May 3rd, 2023. Registration is conducted at the Oswego County Board of Elections at 185 East Seneca Street. Is there a motion to move the designation of voter registration days?
I'll make the motion.
Thanks, Pam. Second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Any discussion? Okay, all in
I would just encourage all those who are 18 and older and not currently registered to vote to take advantage of these 2 days and register to vote for the Oswego City School District upcoming budget and board members and any other propositions that are standing on that.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item C for the Board of Education is the second reading of our policies. We have 5681, school safety plans, 6121, sexual harassment in the workplace, 6215, probation and tenure, 7350, corporal punishment emergency interventions, 7618, use of timeout rooms, and 7350 is on there twice. Yeah, sorry. My brain caught up with my mouth. Is there a motion to move these for the second reading?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Pam. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Dave. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you. All right, and we are on to the superintendent report.
Good evening, Board. We do have a number of business items to share with you as part of our update, but those will come momentarily as part of our budget presentation for this evening. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to share with the Board and the community some things that are happening in the school district this month. March is a very busy month for our school district. It is Music in Our Schools Month. If folks have not had the opportunity, many of our schools at this point have had ensemble performances by our orchestras, our bands, and our choral groups. Upcoming this week and next week, we still have CER's orchestra concert is this evening. We have KPS presenting their orchestra concert tomorrow night, and FPS presenting their musical, as well as on Thursday, FLS is presenting their orchestra and choral concert, as well as the Minetto musical over at Minetto. So if people haven't had a chance to participate or to observe some of our musical presentations, it's a great week to do that. March is also Read Across America month, week earlier in the month. I know that Ms. Dowd mentioned our Battle of the Books when we met last time. Frederick Layton School just had their literacy night with their principal, Mrs. Griffin, being duct taped to the wall. So we've had a lot of literacy celebrations this month. Spring sports have begun, as Maura has pointed out to us, and the weather has been nice enough today that the athletes were practicing outside, which was nice to see. The end of the month brings a couple of important dates. The close of the third quarter is March 31st, and March 31st also designates 100 days until graduation for our seniors, which is a special, I think it must be 100.
It's the day they're
Celebrating. Okay, yes. Of days from the actual graduation date. Yes, a date, and a school date to boot. And then today is World Down Syndrome Day. Many of our schools were celebrating our students with Down syndrome and that special designation day with their crazy socks, and that was promoted across the district. So just a couple of highlights from what has been happening in the last couple of weeks. So then we're going to be moving on to our general fund budget presentation this evening with Mrs. Squires. But just to remind the community about our budget planning goals and priorities in terms of presenting to the community a budget that is fiscally sound and responsible, not excessive to the taxpayers, that provides flexibility within our budget codes and spending, that is foolproof against emergency situations and is flowing, and that it has enough cash flow available in the event that we have lesser state aid or it's withheld in an unfortunate circumstance, and that there is an alignment to our appropriate programming and support, particularly alignment with our strategic goals. So there is information and updates from our state assembly and budget information coming from the state. So at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Mrs. Squires.
Thank you. So I don't know if the board has seen, but under NISBA and NISCUS, they have had the Senate and Assembly one-house budgets where they look at the executive budget and either agree or disagree with what the governor has put in her budget. So they have laid out their priorities. There are a lot of things that the Senate and Assembly agree on, and there are some things that they have differences in where they're not too far apart, which is very good. But here are some of the highlights of the Assembly and the one-house budget. That they're accepting or supporting a 3% minimum increase on the foundation aid from this point going forward. So as you know, for the last 3 years, we've gotten sizable foundation aid increases. That money was used to catch us up to where we should have been all the years that we did not receive sufficient foundation aid. They are agreeing to reject the high-impact tutoring foundation aid set-aside. So if you saw in one of our earlier presentations for revenue, they had carved out a piece of foundation aid and wanted us to use that for tutoring And both the House and Assembly, or Senate and Assembly, have rejected that proposal, so we'll see if that goes through. They're rejecting the proposed extension of duplicative school building level budget reporting. A few years ago, they had started districts to do a transparency report where we had to provide data by school in terms of budget and actual. This has created a lot of extra work for business offices across the board. They have this information already, but they have it in a different format. And so this would eliminate that extra reporting that we have to do once in June and once in December. Another great thing that they're supporting is funding universal school meals to the tune of $280 million. So we support that as well. They're also proposing to support CTE programs by raising the BOCES aided salary cap. So right now, when we get BOCES aid, if it is for a person who works at BOCES, we are only, and their salary is, say, $75,000, we are only aided at $30,000 on that person. And they have been trying to increase the cap on this for a few years now. They're looking to increase the cap from $30,000 to $60,000 so that we could generate more aid. We hope that goes through. They're also looking to put more money into high school P-TECH and add another $20 million for that across the state. They are also going to use money to conduct a study on the foundation aid formula. Whenever they start looking at this, it's usually a long process, and sometimes it doesn't work out well for everyone. They are also, which is not a bullet point on, but it is in the summaries that they provided, they're looking to increase the capital outlay projects, which is we could put one in our general fund every year and have that from a $100,000 capital outlay project to a $250,000 capital outlay project. This would allow the district to do some of the low-hanging fruit that is in the building condition survey every year, so that so we can start whittling down and maybe not have a large capital project down the road, or use that capital project for larger items. That has also been on the docket for the last couple of years, and it has not gotten any traction. But if we could do anything, that would be a great one to have. So we're going into our budget. So preliminary revenue, we have property taxes, which includes a 1.44% tax levy increase of $383,890. Pilots are flat. We did get information from the city, but pilot information usually is not solidified until after the budget is voted on, and so we used a best estimate to keep it flat. State aid, we're showing $6,665,051 increase. The building aid on the emergency project was a one-time revenue for last year, and that was for the soil remediation project that we had over by Wilbur Field. Other revenue is projected to go up $301,286. So we have revenue of $103,332,823, which is a $4.5 million increase approximately. So in my previous presentations, I had broken it out because I have to provide to the public a three-part budget, which is administrative, capital, and program. The administrative budget is projected to go up almost $1 million. The capital budget, $792,000, almost $793,000, and the program budget, $4.4 million, for a total expenditure of $6.1 million differential between the previous budget and the current proposed budget of $103 million. So the next few slides is showing the difference between the current budget and the proposed budget for each of those component categories. So as you can see, we have salaries, equipment, contractual, BOCES, and supplies. In the administrative budget, in total, that is projected to go up almost $1 million over the current year budget. The capital budget has those same component categories except for debt service and an interfund transfer. And as I spoke on before, the interfund transfer is for the expenditure of the soil remediation project over to the capital fund. And in total, that is projected to go up $792,587,000. The program budget, which I presented last week, or at the last meeting, is going up $4.4 million overall in all of the categories. The largest in the program budget, besides salaries, are benefits, which includes your health insurance, your dental, EAP insurance, and any other category that we provide for our employees. So the total budget for 2023-2024 is $103,332,823, which is a 4.5% increase in revenue over the current year. And the appropriation budget is an increase of 6.4% over the current year, and we have a balanced budget for this year. So as we go on over the weeks during the budget planning process and the budget development process, I bring you an administrative budget, a capital budget early on. Well, things continue to change in those budgets, depending on, meetings that we have with auditors or fiscal advisors or buildings. And so I have to go back and continuously revamp some of those budgets. What the next slides show is the budget that I presented to you, which you have slides on from previous, and what those new amounts are and why those categories have changed. So in the administrative budget, there was a change in the salaries of $12,000. There, as you know, you had voted on some contracts recently. There were things in there that I had to include and adjust my projections. Equipment, there was no change in the budget. Contractual, there was an increase in $68,000. There were some contractual agreements where we had received after the administrative budget was put into place, where they showed sizable increases. BOCES as well increased $623,000. We received information late in the game that BOCES had to get modulars for some of their students, and that cost is passed out to all of the component districts through their ARWADA. And at least 3/4 of that is due to that cost. Plus, there are other services that are being provided in admin as well. And supplies, in the last meeting, one of the last meetings, the board had wanted to put in money towards esports, Project Lead the Way, and robotics. So that is that change in the administrative budget.
Nancy, just so I'm understanding this correctly, when we look at the budget summary, the administrative budget has gone up roughly about 10%. And so when people are looking at that, I want to point out that you're talking about the major increase here is the BOCES. So really of that almost $1 million you said of the administrative portion, 65% of it is the BOCES that we don't control that we need to pay as part of this.
That's true. So that we have the administrative part of the BOCES budget, we have a capital component of the BOCES budget, and now we have this modular piece. So those three things add to what that cost is that is reported under the administrative budget. And you're correct, we don't have any control over that.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make sure anybody who's thinking, hey, there's a 10% administrative, that's not our administrators. There's a
No,
lot more in this.
And that's why we break it out by category to show the public and the board exactly where those buckets are. You're welcome. The next is the capital budget. So under salaries, we have an increase of $80,000 as we go through the budget. We have to make sure that we have all vacancies accounted for, and we have a lot of moving pieces in personnel. Ask Mr. Syracuse. He's very busy all the time with those movements. And so I had looked at the budget, and we looked, verified all the staffing, and realized that we had left off 2 custodial workers. And so when we re-verified the positions, those had been added back. Equipment is increased from the last projection, $120,000. We found out recently that our food service truck is costing us more to fix and to maintain than it's worth. So we would like to purchase a new refrigerated truck next year. Contractual, we've had increased costs through Siemens, through our controls, trash removal, RFPs. We've had increases in water and our gas bills as well. BOCES has increased around $20,000, and that is due to telecommunication increased costs. Supplies, there is no change. And debt service is a principal payment that we're planning on making of $1,125,000. This payment will allow us to keep our debt service steady so that we do not have spikes in our tax cap up or down. And this will allow us to keep that flat and our levy at 1.44%. As an increase so that it does not go into the negative. This has been reviewed by our auditors, and it has also been reviewed by fiscal advisors, and this one-time payment will keep the tax cap from going into a negative position. Program budget, as you can see, it's $77,266,888. Which is the same as I previously presented to you, and there has been no change in that budget. So by component, the administrative budget comprises 9.9% of our total budget. Capital is 15.3%, and program is 74.8%. This is within a percentage, point percentage, the same, almost the same pie chart that you saw last year. So this, unfortunately, it's a little hard to see, but this is from fiscal advisors' presentation that they did that I just would like to revisit. So 23-24 is where we are currently, and 24 means fiscal 23-24, just so that everyone knows. The tax levy limit before exclusions is $26,643,448, which is what we levied in the current year. The total tax levy limit is how high can we go up to and ask our taxpayers to fund. And we can increase our levy by 1.44%. That has been reflected in the revenue of our budget, which would be a $383,891 increase to our levy. that may seem like a really large amount, but the increase to the levy, fiscal advisors is telling us, is going to be absorbed by the increase in property values across the district. So there really should not be a tax rate increase to the taxpayers. This slide shows the tax levy information that fiscal advisors had also shown us, which shows that the spikes are when the pilots for the nuclear plants came on and off, but the trend has been that the tax levy has been going down from year to year. So what are our next steps? We're waiting for the legislative budget on April the 1st. I'm hearing it may be delayed a few days. And then 4/26, board petitions are due to the board clerk. May 2nd through the 9th, we have to have a public hearing. May 10th, the budget notice has to be mailed out to to all of the voters as part of our annual newsletter. And May 16th is the annual budget vote. To reiterate, these are our polling sites: Scriber Fire Station, Crisafulli Ice Rink, Elam Grace Church, and the Oswego Town Hall. And the board has already approved those sites for this year. So in this next slide, the reserve plan, which had been presented to the board 1 or 2 years ago, I can't really remember, was sent to our legal and for them to review, because I was asked to bring it back to the board for their approval. They looked at it. I had some highlights on there of, here are some reserves we don't currently have that we could. One of them is an insurance reserve. Now, this is not for our health insurance. This is for any claims that our regular insurance liability and as such do not cover. So, so it is up to the board to determine the amount that they would like to fund this reserve. I do not, in my resolution, have an amount here because I thought that the board would want to have a discussion on how much they would like to, what the maximum they would like to fund this reserve. But right now, it cannot exceed $4,855,000 or 5% of the total budget for such fiscal year. And again, it should be used to purchase or maintain insurance or to act on losses, claims, or judgments. And this does not require voter approval, just the board's approval.
I know that reserves are often really restricted. Is this something that if we funded, can we not move money out of it? Or do you know, is there a limits on?
That one I will have to look at.
I mean, I
Give
can
me
look
a
it up too,
minute.
actually. That's,
Actually, I have it right here.
okay.
Expenditures, separate board authorization, not required to spend from the reserve. So I'm thinking, it has to be established by a board resolution, but to spend the money, I think we could just appropriate it if we needed it to support any claims in the budget.
So as a follow-up to that, in your time here, could we have ever used this? So you're saying this is other, and we self-insure, and we have that pot, and we put some into the general fund, right? Was there ever a time in your time here that you go, boy, that would have been nice to have?
I will answer it like this. I will say that we are very lucky that we did not have to have a fund like this, because there were some things that other districts are facing challenges currently where they have lawsuits that they cannot the insurance company will not defend, and they have to pay for those claims somehow.
And those are beyond something like workman's comp, for which we already have a separate account
Yes,
for?
this would be for a lawsuit for, I don't know how to say it. So we are covered by our regular insurance policies, not workers' comp, not disability, not our health insurance, but for liability for the board, liability for the district, liability for a property casualty, just like you would for your home. The insurance companies have said there are some claims that we will not pay. So one of them is for the Child's Victim Act. And, you know, we've been fortunate that we don't have any claims, and I hate saying that in public, knock on wood, but that is one of the things that would be covered by an insurance reserve had we had those claims, because insurance companies are not covering those claims.
Okay. So in a case like that, I see we have almost $2 million in our liability. Could our liability be used for that purpose?
I would have to look at that, Jim. I would have to look.
That's fine.
Can I ask one other question? And you don't necessarily need to answer this today, but I know when fiscal advisors were here and presented the information to us about the tax cap and the numbers, like a few slides back. Part of what, can you explain or help to explain probably better than I can, that part of what we're doing with raising the levy is situating ourselves that when it comes ourselves for the next nuclear negotiation, the percentage that we get from a pilot is going to be directly related to our tax cap formula. And if we leave it at zero, we're basically going to be losing percentage.
So depending on how the next intermunicipal agreement is structured, I just want to put out that caveat. It has been structured so that we have a share in the pilot with the county and the town of Scriba. And our sharing formula has been such that the school district was getting about 75 cents on every dollar of that pilot agreement. As the levy goes down, the district's purchasing power for that dollar also decreases. So instead of, because the levy has been flat and has decreased in the previous years, instead of, say, 75 cents on the dollar, now we're getting 70 cents on the dollar. And it could keep going down. And what that is going to mean ultimately, if we have the same type of sharing agreement, is that when it comes to nuclear negotiations, that amount that is lost out of that buying power, out of that dollar that has been decreasing, is that shift is going to go to the taxpayers. We are trying to keep that as high as possible so that that money continues to come to the district. Did I explain it? Any other questions on that? Okay. So, so the first proposition, which will appear if the board agrees to the amount, is the proposition for the board to adopt a budget of $103,332,823 for this fiscal year starting on July 1st, 2023. Proposition number 2 is going to be that the board authorizes a purchase of student transportation vehicles not to exceed $1.4 million, and to pay for those vehicles through serial bonds of $1.4 million. you can see that there was a change in the way that this proposition was written from previous years. Before it had been very restrictive to say 8 64-passenger buses and 3 of this and 1 wheelchair. Unfortunately, we would love to do that, and I can tell you what transportation has asked for. They've asked for 8 64-passenger buses and 2 to 6 passenger SUVs for our McKinney-Vento students. Unfortunately, we could not write that into the resolution because bus and vehicles are so difficult to get now that the costs are changing even through state contract. So we have put up to a maximum, so if the maximum we can only get 7 buses and 2 SUVs, that's what we'll do with whatever money we have available, so that we're being fiscally responsible. Proposition number 3 is that the board be authorized to enter into an energy performance contract with a maximum cost not to exceed $5 million. The board had approved a resolution previously, and they will approve approve the RFP to Siemens. And on the board agenda tonight are more resolutions for the EPC and for the next proposition, which is proposition number 4, to bond for that $5 million for the EPC. If I can just step back for a moment. Proposition number 2 and proposition number 4 are bond propositions. So tonight, if the board is going to vote on these, and they do have to be voted on tonight because they have to be put into the paper 4 times prior to the budget date, they need a 2/3 vote, which means a 2/3 of the entire board, a 7-member board, not a 6-member board, and also they need to be a roll call vote. Okay? So I just wanted to point that out. Proposition number 5 is to allow the district to establish a technology and equipment reserve. This is one of the reserves that were talked about in Rick Tim's presentation that we should have. And this is for a technology and equipment reserve not to exceed $3 million, and this reserve is good for 10 years. So we could fund this with any surplus, budget surplus funds or unassigned fund balance at the end of the fiscal year. Proposition number 6 is for another reserve. This reserve is for a bus purchase reserve, and the maximum amount in this reserve would be $5 million plus accrued interest and investments. And this, the term of this bus reserve would also be for 10 years.
So Nancy, just so everyone knows, when you say the term of it, it's the term that we can fund it. And
Yes.
then after 10 years, no more funds can go into it.
Unless
but
it is,
it's-
that's correct.
Unless we redo it.
Unless we
And then
reauthorize it.
if we don't reauthorize it after the 10 years, it's just spend down the fund and whichever one. it
That's
is.
correct. And this is separate apart from the current capital reserve that we currently have, which is halfway funded. And that was reauthorized by the board in 2022.
Nancy?
Yes.
For the bus reserve fund and the technology equipment reserve, would this also must be voted on this evening to be able to get whatever necessary for the May vote?
Yes.
So there's no chance of tabling it, it's up or down right now?
Yeah, so for everything that I have on the agenda tonight in terms of propositions, if the board would say no, because there are so many things that have to happen, we need to have the ballot created, which has all the propositions on it. We need all of our budget newsletters and everything done. So there are a lot of moving pieces that we have to do. If the board has any concern on the propositions, you know, we can, I don't know when our next, I don't know when our next meeting is. I'd prefer not. I'd prefer them voted on today. No, we have to, as a matter of fact, because when I spoke with the attorneys said that all of these have to be on this meeting so that we could put them in the paper the correct amount of times that we have to allow the public to look at the propositions. Sorry.
Including number 1 for the budget?
No,
Okay.
no, no, all of the other ones, the ones that require, the ones that require the bonding and the EPC and the buses and actually the reserves. And then the last proposition, proposition number 7, is one that we put on every year. You'll notice that there are some blank spaces in here. That's because we do not have the information from the library yet, but I wanted the public and the board to know that there will be a proposition from the library. If the library does not have a change in the amount of money that they want levied, then you will not see this as a proposition because we are not required to show it if there is no change in the library budget. However, if there are people who are running for library board seats, those will be shown.
Just one more thing, Nancy, just so the public is aware. We do not fund the Oswego City Public Library. It just has to go on our ballots.
As a city school district, we do have to collect their taxes and put on our tax bills anything for the public library. Because by law, it is the school district public library.
Thank you, but I know that there are people that get confused and think we actually fund the library also. So thank you for clarifying.
Questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, next up is our consent agenda. These are the Special Education Board Report from, I think that's today, thank you, Lisa. February reports, the OHS Extra Classroom Report, OMS Extra Classroom Report, projected fund balances through the end of February, MD&A, Treasurer's Consolidated, Budget Status Report, OCSD Financial Report, all of those for February, as well as our meeting minutes from March 7th and from March 13th. Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
I'll move it.
Thank you, Dave. Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next up, we have personnel with Bob Syracuse.
Good evening, everyone. So our first two items, item A and item B, we have a few retirements, so it's professional staff retirements and our support staff retirement. I'd like to pull each one of those out, just to mention those folks. Our first one is Maria Coletta at OHS, who is a foreign language teacher and has been working in the district since September 1st, 1995. Our second is Tammy McCauley at FPS, who has been with us as a teaching assistant since March 2nd, 2005. Our third is Catherine Mills at OHS as a social studies teacher since September 1st, 1990. And then our last retiree is Wendy Harrington at KPS, who has been a teacher aide and library clerk since September 3rd, 2002. So items A and B as presented.
Is there a motion for A and B as presented?
Make the motion.
Thank you, Pam. Second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Tom. Any discussion?
Just a thank you to those folks for all their time in the district and enjoy your well-earned and deserved retirement.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Go ahead, Bob.
Okay. Items C through J, we have professional staff recommendations and support staff recommendations as presented.
Is there a motion for C through J?
Make the motion.
Thanks, Tom. Second?
I'll second it.
Pam, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and our last is items K through L, which are our substitutes and our extracurricular volunteers as presented.
Okay, is there a motion for K and L? Thank you, Dave. Second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Tom. Any discussion?
Thank you to the volunteers.
I was just going to say, yeah, thank you to our volunteers. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are back to Nancy for finance.
So item A and B are donations as presented.
Is there a motion for A and B?
Move the motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Jim. Any discussion?
Again, a huge thank you to those folks that continually, I believe it's donations from individuals that work there, right? Thank you
Yes.
so much for the support they always provide.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
C is for the board to approve the seeker resolution for the student transportation vehicle as a type 2 action as presented.
Okay, is there a motion for C?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
D is for the board to approve the resolution to put the proposition up for the transportation vehicles as presented.
Is there a motion? This is not the one we have to do a roll call vote.
This
Okay.
is not.
Is there a motion for D?
Move the motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Or, sorry, any discussion?
Nancy, what percentages of bus purchases do we get aided back the following year, roughly?
Our transportation aid is roughly 87%.
So 87% of the purchases of the buses come back to this district a year later.
That's correct.
Thank you. So the public is aware. 85% of that money comes back to the district.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
E is for the resolution to approve the bonding for the transportation vehicles. This one does require a 2/3 majority and a roll call.
Okay. So is there a motion for to approve the bonding for transportation vehicles?
I'll make the motion.
A second?
I'll second.
Okay. Tom Chiappa?
Yes.
Pamela Dowd?
Yes.
Lisa Glidden votes yes. James McKenzie?
Yes.
Sean Onmacht?
Yes.
Dave Crisafulli?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes.
F is the resolution to reject the lowest bidder for the mechanical phase of 3B for the capital project as being non-responsive as presented.
Is there a motion for F?
Move the motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
G is for the resolution awarding the Phase 3B contracts to the primes as presented.
Is there a motion for G?
Make the motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
H is for the board to approve the seeker for the energy performance contract as presented.
Is there a motion for H?
I'll move the motion.
A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Pam and Dave. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I is for the board to approve the resolution to enter into an energy performance contract with Siemens as presented.
Is there a motion for I?
I'll move it.
I'm sorry. Oh, no, I think I is the
Oh,
resolution for the EPC.
I'm sorry, I read the wrong one.
So which one are we doing?
No, because we
I
did
is
the
right.
seeker,
Yeah, we did the seeker. This
was
is,
H.
This is I.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I skipped over one. So I is for the resolution for the EPC with Siemens. I was looking at J.
Oh, okay.
So I'll move that.
Okay.
Aye,
Thank you, Jen.
resolution for EPA with Siemens.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And J is for the board to approve putting the proposition up for vote. And this is so that the district can get the extra 10% aid. So just so that I can explain what happens, is if we go out for a regular energy performance contract, we do not get all of our aid, and our aid is around 89%. So we would get 79% of our aid back on the energy performance contract. If the voters approve the energy performance contract, we actually get another additional 10% aid, which brings us up to the cap. So it's very beneficial if the voters approve the energy performance contract so that we can get our maximum aid back.
John Locke would be so proud. Okay. Is there a motion for J?
I'll move it.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion?
The only thing I just wanted to clarify, Nancy, this is part of our efficiency study, and correct? And this is something, so people look at it and says not to exceed $5 million, but over the 15 years, it will pay itself back, so it will pay the bonding on the savings that we have throughout the district.
That's correct.
Correct.
It should pay us back through any energy savings that we have when all of our lights are converted to LED. And we'll also see savings on, we are replacing 2 of our boilers in this project as well.
Thank you.
I think the overall, after this 15 or 18 years, is that we would save $2 to $3 million over the whole course. So it not only pays itself back, but then there will be another 2-3 mil on top of that, spread out over 15, 18 years, but it's still 2-3 mil we saved.
Right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
K is for the resolution to approve the bonding for the EPC. This one requires a roll call and a 2/3 majority.
Okay, so is there a motion for L, the proposition for bond resolution?
I'll move it.
No, K.
Oh, sorry, K,
Okay.
to approve bonding, sorry.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Tom. Second?
I'll second it.
Jim? Okay. Tom Chiappa?
Yes.
Pamela Dowd?
Yes.
Lisa Gliddens, yes. Jim McKenzie?
Yes.
Sean Onmacht?
Yes.
Dave Christofoli?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now we can go, now we can put it on the ballot.
So L is for the proposition for the bond resolution to be on the ballot as presented.
Is there a motion for L? Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
I'm sorry, I can't group them tonight.
No,
but
that's
these
okay,
are
I
too
know.
important.
They have to be separate.
M is for the district to approve the reserve plan that was as presented.
Okay, is there a motion for M, the reserve plan?
I'll move it.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
I don't know how you want to do N because there's no, well, N is for the board to approve an insurance reserve that shall not exceed the greater of $4,855,000 or 5% of the total budget
So
as presented.
at some time, we have to come up with a number?
Yeah. So let's move it for discussion and, or not, and then we can talk about it. So is there a motion?
Yeah, because it can be less than that, but it can't be any more than
Right.
$4,855,000.
Right. Is there a motion? Or,
I'll move the motion.
thank you, Pam. Second?
I'll second.
So I usually don't talk first, but what I would say is for this, I think it's a good idea to establish the reserve. We can always determine whether we want to fund the reserve, right? That's a separate decision that we'll make at a later time once we know. Right, just to, right, I mean, that's my thoughts on it. Is there any other discussion?
Well, so this is different than the next two in the fact that this is not going to the voters, is that correct?
That is correct. This is a board decision.
Yeah, so if I had to vote right now, I would probably vote against it. I'm not sure I know enough yet. We've just kind of recently more learned about this. There were a few questions I've had. So if this one isn't urgent, I'm not going to stop discussion because a motion to table is not debatable, so I don't want to stop people from talking, but that's what I'm going to do when people stop talking.
Any other discussion?
I simply just wanted to clarify that it is just establishing a fund. We are not funding it yet. We just want to have it on our books in case we think we need to start funding it for the future.
Right. And we do have some questions about what's the difference between this and the liability reserve, right? But it's just if we want to have it there as possible for future use.
Yeah, and just out of curiosity's sake, if we never fund it, and we just, it's like our nuclear reserve fund. So, I mean, similarly, it can sit there or be removed at another time, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't hurt.
Yeah, so I guess my only, again, not knowing as much as I'd like to know yet, my only feeling is there's a lot of, the more places you create to stick money, the more you can dilute where you're sticking money, and it becomes an image thing. We also got to know why it's there. Like I said, if it's not workman's comp, if it's not liability, what are we talking about here? Because we've survived, some of these reserves have been around 3 decades. We haven't had this one. So. Oh, sorry, knock wood.
Any other discussion?
So I don't know if I'll get a second. I'll move to table this one.
Is there a second to move to table? Which means we don't vote on it tonight. Seeing none, thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of establishing an insurance reserve?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Okay. Oh,
O is for the board to approve the establishment of a bus purchase reserve, and P is for the board to establish a technology reserve at the amounts indicated as presented.
great. Is there a motion for O and P?
I'll move the motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Dave. And I think we can do these two together because all the others were predicated on, like, if we didn't pass one, we couldn't do the next and couldn't do the next. But these two we can do,
Right.
well, these we can do together. I guess if there's going to be debate about it, someone can vote to split the question if we think one's going to go one way and one the other. But we can see when we get there. Okay, any other discussion?
On these?
Yes.
So, yes, so for bus purchase reserve, I think our reasoning behind this for the public is the state is telling us we need to convert to all-electric buses by,
2027.
Well, they've changed it, there's now some talk to 2029.
okay,
because
so
don't have the
they've,
infrastructure to
maybe
start.
given us a couple of more years, but as we all know, electric vehicles are extremely expensive. We have to convert the transportation center to be able to charge these vehicles. So that is the thought behind this reserve. is looking ahead to the future for these electric buses. And if that doesn't come through, wouldn't it be nice to have a little reserve? Because we always need buses. And I don't think that's going to go away in the future. So I just wanted to talk about that. That's our idea behind that one. And technology, hello, if we didn't learn anything from COVID, we need technology. So we have to have money to keep replacing these lovely little tools that we have for all of our people in our district. So that's the ideas behind both of those reserves. And correct me if I'm wrong, or if I've missed anything.
No, you're absolutely correct.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to add to that's not only technology, but a technology and equipment reserve. And the thing I think that's really important to point out is that with the capital project where it is, and knowing, you know, inflationary costs and everything that is, we're not going to probably have a major capital change where we're changing the state of a building, you know, the actual go in and make construction changes. So one of the areas we can do that in changing the environments is with the equipment and the desks and that we put in the rooms to change for educational purposes, not just changing the building. So I know we haven't had necessary line items in that, and I know that that's changing. So I'm glad that we will have this so we can utilize it.
Yeah, it's very important. That's one of the things that in a bad budget year gets cut out every year, the equipment. Or if we go to a contingent budget, if it's non-essential, that also has to be eliminated from the budget. But the furniture and fixtures are not aidable in a capital project. So having a reserve outside of the capital reserve in order to buy things like desks and chairs and blinds and things that, you know, are really needed in all of our schools for a replacement plan is necessary.
Thank you.
So I'll keep it short because I might be the only one speaking against this one. We do bus purchases. We've done it every year. We put a proposition out. We just voted for it. It's going to be $1.4 million. We ask people, and that always gets voted on for the buses. This seems to me as an additional unnecessary layer. I do get the idea of the electric buses, but we do have other reserves that we can utilize to help offset those costs. So whether you put it in something called workman's comp or whether you put it in something specifically called this, the money is still available. And one of the problems I have with this is that, well, not only what I just said, but that to be able to utilize this fund is not by board vote. We would have to go back out to the voters to get their permission to use any funds that we set aside in this. We're already doing that to ask them to buy buses. It seems like there's a bit of a redundancy in there that doesn't make sense to me. And it also seems like it may be, you know, tying us up in a way that we wouldn't want, which actually goes more to my technology reserve one. COVID hit, we had limited electronics for students, right? We decided as a district we were going to go, every student would have a tablet or whatever they have. You know, one person, one electronic. We spent, I think, maybe about $1.1 million. We started with $900,000. We added another $100,000, maybe two later. It all came from workman's comp.
Unemployment, I think.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. It came from unemployment, which when we had reserve, when we had unfunded, we had balance left in the next year, we put that money back into the workman's comp. But that money was there. And just as we do already existing have that slush fund, this technology reserve would have to go to the voters. So let's say we want to say, for some reason, because you got all of our laptops at the same exact time, the laptops all start going at the same exact time, or half or three-quarters of them do. Now, instead of a board being able to pivot and say, we want to be able to use this fund is restricted to voter approval. So we would have to then set up a vote, wait till May, do whatever. I just think these two in particular, they don't give us the flexibility necessary. We've existed without them, and we've got other funds that we can hold the monies in. So that's my reason for speaking against this motion.
Didn't we talk about in the past, though, potentially instead of going to the bonding for buses, to be able to purchase them with cash? I mean, I didn't.
We talked about that, but we've never gotten to a point where we said that's what we want to do. So because I'm going based on what I see today, right? We all voted unanimously to put that as a proposition for the buses on there. So if we get into that other conversation, I'd be welcome to it. And then maybe I would vote for this one later, right? Because it wouldn't be on this particular vote. You said this has to be done today to be on the May ballot. So I'd be open for further discussion about that. But from what I know now, especially having to go out to the voters, I love the voters. I think it's a great thing about the capital project that is there. But capital projects are, I'm envisioning it differently. I'm envisioning capital project 60, 80, 100 million. I'm not looking at a technology reserve funding those kinds of things. And I think as a district, we'd be better to be able to pivot.
And so I guess I would say to that, I mean, I understand the argument about it might be in some ways tying our hands or slowing things down in terms of being able to spend it. I mean, I think it's important to have money saved. I wasn't on the board at the time, but the capital plan of $63 million was a very hard sell, and it failed the first time, right? I mean, I was on the other end of it, where people from the district were coming to the home and school meetings and saying, please go out and vote on this. So, I mean, I think, to throw out the numbers like 60, 80, $100 million capital plan, like, we know what we need, but I think it's very hard to get.
Yeah, it's funny, I was just having the same exact conversation earlier today. The first time it went up, there was gonna be a decent bump to the taxpayers. When that $64 million was originally presented, the taxpayers were going to pay a larger share by voting yes to the proposition. The second time it came back, it was literally pennies on the $1,000 that they would have to pay, because two things happened. One, we sold the Ed Center, which we took the entirety, I was not on that board, that board took the entirety of that fund and basically put it into the capital reserve. So now the capital reserve could help offset the funds. There was also, well, I'll just say that, all right? Right now, as we stand, we have about $6.6 million in our capital reserve funds. Right now, if we used all $6.6 million in that capital reserve, we could propose to the taxpayers a $65 million project with zero money from them, roughly.
If our state aid doesn't change.
If the state aid doesn't change. I'm using the 88% we got on the last project. Really, 6.6 mil, which we currently have, would say, taxpayers, we want to do this, please let us use this money that we already have. We're not charging you a penny more. So I do think the first vote, second vote in our current situation do differ a little bit.
For this equipment reserve, could this also, aside from the equipment in the rooms, could that also be used for, like, the generators that we need, for example?
Because the resolution's written so broadly.
Okay. Okay, because that wouldn't be capital, because it's something that's not going to last, well.
Well, it could be included in a capital project, but.
But we could fund it with this reserve.
Right.
Okay.
But I'm going to go back to, if that generator blows and we need that big number money and we say it's in this reserve account, we'd have to get the voters to pull it out, as opposed to if we put that money in workman's comp or something like that, the board the next day at an emergency meeting could spend that money and allocate that money and not have to go to the voters.
So I've known you a long time, and this is going to sound
We can do
snarky.
this all day.
Well, no, but this is going to sound snarky, but I want you to remember this conversation when we vote to put extra money into unemployment, and you balk at that. Yeah, so I will remember March 21st at 6:15 or 5:15. No, it must be 6:15.
Yeah. Now I get it.
Remember
No, and to be equal, I've got tables I was gonna hand out to everybody, but I realized that, you know what, I'm good where I'm at, but the reserves are part of those tables.
And, I hear Jim loud and clear. And he has a very valid point. If we needed a generator,
Which we do.
which we do, and we need it yesterday, we either have to wait until a May vote or establish a special vote, which costs a few dollars to do, if I'm not mistaken. Jim, you swayed me. You did sway me, because I have to agree with, I like the idea that, yes, the board, whatever board is sitting, can go to that unemployment fund, which is very hefty, because we put it there, because it's usable funds.
Because it's more flexible.
It's more flexible. So we could have the generator tomorrow as opposed to in 3 months.
Though, to be clear, they're on back order. Right, I mean, it's not that we can't. Right.
That is true.
Right.
But I just wanted to say that they were put on the agenda because these are reserves that came out of the financial, 5-year financial planning from Rick Timms as a suggested reserves that we should have. And it was also reviewed by our legal team for our Fiorenza of reserves that we did not have in place.
So, I mean, I guess, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
Did
I
you
was
have-
just going to say, I can see your point, Jim, in terms of that, but I look at it in terms of a comprehensive plan for all the way across. We want to fund them all. We want to fund the ones that are accessible, and we want to fund the ones that we have for a longer-term goal. So I would say, yeah, again, we don't have to fund it now. Let's establish it so we've got the flexibility. You want to be able to pivot. I think we put it into both the long-term plan and the short-term in terms of pivoting, utilizing those other funds as well.
So one question then. We needed to buy the generator. We approved the funds to come out of the unemployment to purchase it. Can we then in May go back to the voters and say, hey, we had to use funds to purchase equipment. Now we're asking you, can we reimburse it back to the unemployment?
I would prefer to ask legal on that.
So my, on the buses, I mean, I'm going to argue in favor of this motion because I think having the transportation one, there's the possibility that we would have to go to the voters with a bond of, I don't know, $20 million, right? To turn over if we had to very quickly move 8 buses in a year or 12 buses in a year to be able to accommodate, and because this is, as Tom pointed out, like planned and in the future, like we would know that we're gonna start, I mean, whatever, there are different ideas about budgeting, but I feel like if there's a deadline coming, we would maybe try to like mix things in so we're not hit all at once, right? Just to try to like. Right, budget it in and start moving slowly so that we don't have a $20 million all at once. So again, I think a lot of this could be, and I'm sure we will again debate it when it comes to funding these reserves, if they are on the ballot and if they pass. But I guess I would rather have them, I'd rather have the possibility to fund them than be stuck. And I mean, to be clear, it probably won't be us, right? Like 5 years from now, someone's going to say, like us, why in the world did they not establish a nuclear reserve? Why were they not funding this the whole time, right? So, because suddenly when the writing's on the wall, it's like, oh, so, sorry,
Yeah, Nancy, do you know the difference between, like, the buses today when we buy them opposed to electric bus, the cost?
Electric buses are right now three times the cost of a regular bus. And the cost of regular buses have increased as well. We were able to get a regular 64-passenger bus 2 years ago below $100,000. Now they're up to $125,000, $130,000 a bus. If you're looking at an electric bus, it's probably in the $450,000 to $550,000 range for one bus.
And hopefully, if technology improves, that comes down by the time we have to do this, but
That is the thought.
I think it's still gonna be a lot more, and historically, we do about 1.4 million for buses every year, thereabouts. So,
Well, what they're saying is that you're going to be replacing the batteries a lot more frequently. You're only getting the aid on these buses. The aid has been extended on the bus, but the battery lifetime is not matching the life of the bus. So we're hearing batteries right now, you're gonna have to replace every 8 years. There's going to be, and we can do a presentation on that when we get more information, but there's going to be a disposal issue for the batteries. Purchasing a new battery are $20,000, if not more, per vehicle. So there's, and then talk about the infrastructure that we have to do to accommodate all of the chargers for the buses down the road. So we're having those conversations in the field right now with the Transportation Department, with NYSERDA, with National Grid, who said that they're going to, you know, by the time we put all these buses into place in the state, they're going to be ready with the grid. That's what they're promising.
It's good to hear.
Right now, there are about 45,000 buses in the state that at some point will have to be converted to electric buses.
Nancy, have you heard anything about the other districts that have already utilized them in terms of,
So
the
there's
process
only
they're
been
going
a
through?
few districts that have gone to electric buses. I think one is Bethlehem. And then there is another one, and I can't think about it off the top of my head. But some of these districts, because the technology has been changing, they're saying that their battery life for the buses and the amount that it will hold the charge is lower than what the new models are coming out. So you never want to be the first on a project like this.
At the
I'm
canary.
hearing from our architects that you want to just be in the middle.
Right.
Right? And we're not even ready to be in the middle yet. So, but we will have presentations for the board. There are some things that we don't know. So, for example, we went to meetings with State Ed, and State Ed is saying, well, what are you going to be aided in terms of building aid? And what are you going to be aided in terms of transportation aid? Because the infrastructure, yeah, that shouldn't go under your trans aid, but they don't know how they're going to handle it. So we can't do anything as a district to go forward with any of this until we're sure on what funding streams we have available, how they're going to aid it, and what is going to be expected from the districts down the line. They're saying that, oh, we have these grants available, and one of the grants was $5 million, which you would think is a lot of money. But if you divide that by the cost of electric bus, it's nothing. So we're diligently looking at it. I know that Tom Gunn, our transportation supervisor, has also been involved with working with National Grid on doing an evaluation of our site. And as we have more information, we'll bring it to the board.
Okay. All right. Is there any other discussion, good discussion on this?
I think a lot of information went out, and it's a good idea to leave it up to the voters now.
Okay. Well, we have to vote still to, if we want to put it on the ballot. Maura, did you want to?
I just have like a slight question about it. So I think when we originally brought it up, the chargers had to be open for public use, correct?
We're still looking into that. I
Okay.
was told that, but I have not confirmed it.
Okay.
And I don't know how they could be because our transportation department is locked down every night, so it would not be open to the public. But that was something that we had talked about in one of our business official meetings, and I had heard it, but I have not corroborated that yet.
Okay. So if that is a thing that's required, would there be a way to benefit from that in any way? Probably not, but
Yeah, I don't know. It's still too early.
okay.
I mean, I'm going to,
Do we have,
yeah, please do.
do we have to vote on these together, grouped, or?
No,
We can
Because I
make
feel
a
strongly,
motion.
I like one and I don't like the other.
Okay. Do you want to speak to both of them first, and then we'll?
Well, so I just wanted to speak to establishing the reserves in general, and I do understand the idea of funding reserves that have a greater ease of use. But I think it's also important that when we establish reserves, that we're being transparent with the community. And I think that putting funds in a workers' comp fund that we know the intention is to buy buses for is not necessarily being as transparent as we can with the community. And I think it's important, particularly when we have mandates like this potentially coming down the pike in the future, that the community is aware that we are planning for those expenses. And that transparency doesn't necessarily come through if we're putting funds in different reserves, but thinking about using them differently or looking for that flexibility.
Sean, do you want to make a motion to split the question?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to vote on these propositions, or these resolutions separately.
Is there a second?
Second is motion.
Okay. Any discussion on that? All in favor of splitting the question?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, so let's consider O. I think I need to motion again, right, to get it back on, no? Okay, it's already on the floor. Okay, so is there any further discussion on O to establish a bus purchase reserve and proposition for voters? Okay. All in favor of O? Do I have to share roll call these for?
Oh, you don't have
Yeah, I think just for the bonds we had to.
No, just for bonding.
Yeah,
to? Okay.
okay.
You can, but the board can choose to roll call any vote.
Okay. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Against.
Okay, so 2 noes. Okay. For P, resolution to establish a technology reserve and proposition for voters. Is there any further discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
So it's 5-1. Okay. Okay. Maura?
So, as mentioned earlier, the seniors have their countdown to graduation, which is occurring next Friday, and they're also in the process of planning their senior-only pep rally week, or pep week, spirit week. And right now, the student council is in the process of planning their spring pep rally, which it's a new thing they started last year with Mr. Lanigan. But this year we actually have time to honor the winter sports, so they all get their own banners too, which is something that hasn't really happened before. So I think a lot of people are excited for that, and that's going to be in April.
Okay. Items from the board. I'm going to jump in ahead of
You go
Pam
right
and
ahead.
just say, just because I've been to a few concerts over the last few weeks, and I really do want to thank our music teachers, our theater teachers, our theater staff, our drama teachers. I'm not actually sure what we call them, but they have been incredibly busy and with really professional. I mean, it's been, the shows have been great. So I wanted to thank them. I'm sure Pam has more.
Yeah, I'll cross that one off, because Lisa covered that. Thank you. Yeah, the talent in this district is just amazing. So spring has sprung. It's one of my favorite times of year, because everything seems to just come back to life around us. Bodies get outside, like Amanda had said. It was nice to see our athletes be able to be outside. But everyone will be outside soon, enjoying the fresh air. And our seniors have senioritis. Happens every year. Try to contain it. They're counting the days till graduation, which is all, it's about 95 from today, according to Google and my calendar. So, stay focused. You're gonna make it. And just my sincere thanks to all who work for the Oswego City School District. You're all very much appreciated.
Any other items from the board? All right. I believe we have a need for executive session tonight.
Yes, for details of proposed, current, or pending litigation.
Is there a motion for move to executive?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Oh, there won't be a need for a vote. No, there won't be a need for a vote. Thank you, Dave. Okay. Good night.